What's up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about making belt loops. I mentioned it in the video on getting good definition, and I figured I'd just go over the process real quick. So for those of you who want to save yourself time and are tired of like making belt loops individually, or want a good strategy for making a few of them at once, I've come up with a little process. I mean, this is not an industrialized process here. Everything here is made by hand, and we're trying to do it as best we can. We're not like ninja concealment systems or anything. So we don't have a big workshop, and I have no idea how these other companies mass produce their belt loops. So I kind of have to reinvent the wheel a little bit over here. So you want to make a bunch of belt loops, right? I think it was a little while ago, the Kempoist 7, I've mentioned him before, he's a much better planner than I am. I kind of jump right into things and just start hacking away, and he seems to be more involved in planning it out a little bit better than I do. And he had sent me some specs on how to make how he was making belt loops, and I had sort of said, oh wow, that's really interesting, and I kind of filed that away. And then a couple weeks ago, my wife decided that she was going to standardize our belt loop process, and so I think there could be a little bit of both of these systems all rolled into one here, and I want to share with you what we have going on. So you'll look here. We have the three popular sizes of belt loops. We've got 1.5 inch, 1.75 inch, and 2 inches. We've devised, or sort of figured, that you can accommodate all three sizes if you place the rivets 2 5/8. Let me check that spec real quick. I could have been prepared for this. It is, 2 5/8 inches apart. Right? So on the 1.5 inch, you'll have a little more. There'll be a little more room between the loop and the rivet hole, but on the 2 inch, it'll be pretty much maxed out. So if you start off with a 4 inch piece, a 4 inch by 3/4 inch, you can produce a whole bunch of belt loops at once. Now what I've done is I've taken my measuring apparatus here, and I've marked 2 5/8 inches in a number of places on this, so I know that when I'm laying out a holster, I can go, okay, well, it needs to be at least this dimension in this area. And so when I'm drilling out belt loops, I can just line them up, mark 2 5/8 inches across there, and know where my holes need to be. So it's really tedious to either mold them individually or to cut them out after they're molded from the once they're in that sort of bracketed shape. So I started messing around with pre-scoring them a little bit. Now, what we've seen in Century Gun Leather's repairing Kydex videos is that the self-healing properties of this Kydex material are really astonishing. Like, you can be really aggressive with the amount of damage you do to the surface of this, throw it in the oven, or even just hit it with a heat gun. Excuse me, got some little allergies going on. Hit it with the heat gun, and it's almost 100% back to normal. So like, if you're like looking at the knifekits.com boneyard and you see scratch and dent Kydex, get it, because you can fix it. They're gonna knock some money off the price of it for something that's like totally usable. I've bought tons of stuff from here. You hit it with the heat gun, problem solved. right? So I've taken the liberty of doing this in advance. I measured myself 4-inch strip, it's 4 inches tall, and then I scored it at regular intervals at 3/4 of an inch, and then I sort of pre-perforated it. You can see that these are like not all the way loose, but they're like hanging on. They got a little life left in them. They're not like, there's still a little bit to them. And what's going to happen is when we put this in the oven, this is going to generally and sort of half-heartedly try to self-heal through the deep scoring that we've put into this. And what that's going to do is that's going to keep it together while we press this. And then once it's pressed, there will be these perforations, these like weak spots in the giant belt loop that we've created, and then you can just sort of crack them off. What I've done is I've created a die for my press that's about 3/4 of an inch thick. It consists of this plywood and a couple pieces of 125 Kydex to make sure that it's tall enough to accommodate some more substantial belts, and it has like a good crisp edge. But I don't want it too crisp because you can, if you heat it up, you can really pinch the Kydex and then make a thin spot or a weak spot. So I duct taped it up to sort of soften the edge a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the press by itself with only a single sheet of foam, because the other sheet of foam will work against you to reduce the overall height of the belt loop, because they'll meet sort of halfway, right? So if you only have one sheet of foam, you will press the die 100% into the foam, and then the Kydex will bottom out against the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in the oven. I'm going to work it a little bit, because as long as they're hanging on by a thread, it'll make it easier to press them all at once. And then you don't have to do like a whole lot of cutting. And this does save a little bit of time, and it also makes your belt loops more uniform. So here we go. These guys are going to go in the oven. And there we go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the recommendation of a viewer, throw my foam up there so I don't have to run the heat gun while we're doing this. Now, some people ask, John, why do you tell everybody how to do this? Aren't you worried that somebody's going to copy this, or somebody's going to do this or do that? Well, first of all, every time I give out some information or advice, somebody gives me some information or advice. So you get out of it what you put into it. The enthusiasm that comes from people saying, oh, I really like that, here's how I would do it, and it turns out to be a better way, that's invaluable. That means you're not beating your head against the wall trying to work in your super secret underground base to outwit everybody else in the Kydex community. And secondly, we're fishing in a huge ocean here. I saw some statistic that 50% of households, or something nearly 50% of households have a gun in them. Combine that with the fact that there's, I think, only Illinois is the last state in the country that doesn't have some sort of concealed carry program. So you're looking at half the population has a gun, and there's a huge opportunity for people to carry that gun. So are we going to get overloaded with people who make holsters? Really? Do you think Honda and Toyota are putting each other out of business? No, they're both getting along fine, because it's a matter of preference, Additionally, I've taught a few things in my time. I've taught people how to paint and draw. I've taught people how to fix cars. My coworkers and some people that I went to technical school with, I'm always sharing information. I've taught and I teach people how to shoot. And when I go to teach somebody how to do something, I don't go, oh man, I can't teach them everything because they might be better than me at this. No, I mean, they're going to be different, and if they are better than you, then eventually they're going to teach you something back. You know, it's not a matter of being concerned that somebody's going to be better than me. I hope you are. I mean, because then I'll, where I can get awesome holsters. You know, it's not about worrying that somebody's going to outdo you or that somebody's going to put you out of business. I never got into this to start a business. It's just so happened that that's happening that way. It's turned into something that needs my full attention, but I think that it's not unsustainable to teach people how to do it as you practice in the same field. I mean, doctors do it all the time. There are teaching hospitals. There are, artists do it all the time. They work in an art school and they teach a whole bunch of other people how to draw and paint and sculpt. I mean, there are enough of us out here making this kind of work, and there are enough people who are looking for it that I think that everybody can have a voice. Everybody can have a base, and there's a lot of opportunity for everybody. And now that being said, it's important that you find your own voice in doing this. There are only so many ways to skin this cat. Let's be honest. I mean, if you're going to make pancake Kydex holsters, there's going to be a certain format that they go into, and you can expand on that, or you can, be basic in your approach. But it's important that you don't just slap a couple pieces together. And I think Gunfighters Inc. was talking about this. There's a million gladiator concealment holsters all in the same vein, and that's fine because people want that particular thing. So it's up to you whether you're okay with doing this because it's cool and you want what that idea of cool is, and you don't have any problem being derivative because you have a very focused goal. I mean, and to be honest, I started off saying, hey, that's really cool, I want to do something like that, but it's important that you find your own voice in doing this. I mean, and you look at guys like Gunfighters Inc. and Century Gun Leather and Kenpo 7, and they are expanding and finding their own sensitivity to the material and developing their own skills and styles. That being said, I try to develop a style, not like consciously like I need to have a style and here's the elements of that style and they're going to be consistent throughout every single holster. I try to look at the gun and look at the style of the gun. Each gun has its own. If you haven't noticed, guns have their own personality, right? And if you're not noticing that, then I don't know, you might not be opening yourself up to an aspect of the joy of gun ownership. I mean, they're like a car, right? Every car has its own style. Every gun has its own style. If you get like a hot rod, there's certain rims you're not going to put on it just because it's not going to look right, right? And that goes without saying with a holster as well. It needs to, in my opinion, reflect certain aspects of the gun and fit in with the style of that gun. It needs to be appropriate. And that's about the only style that I get into. I mean, I have certain functions that I want the holster to perform, and I want it to feel a certain way when I carry it, and I want it to a certain amount of the form does reflect the function. I don't want it to be bulky in a way that prevents you from sitting and driving and accessing your pockets. and I want it to spread the weight out in a way that is comfortable to wear all the time. But that being said, I think it's important that the personality of the gun comes through in the holster that you design. Or at least that's important for me. And also, it's important that your personality comes through in the holster that you design. Because if there are a ton of us out here making holsters and they all look the same, that's kind of like we're diluting the marketplace with the same old stuff. It's like if you look back and, to around like 1992, and you look at every Japanese car, and they were all the same kind of little box, The Camry looked like the Accord, which looked like whatever Subaru was making at the time, and they were all that little boxy car, and so you can't tell them apart. And what's the point? But now they all have their style. They're very different from each other, and they've got all they have much more like extreme and vibrant personalities than just this little crappy box. And like everybody was making a little crappy box around that time. Like the Ford Escort was a little crappy box, and so was the Honda Civic. Not that they're like garbage, but it was like here's a ruler, here's a car. And I don't think that we should be making holsters like that. I think it's important that over time, not only do we grow together as a community, but we grow away from each other in styles, but not in any kind of like contrived, overt way. It's important that that what you're making comes from the heart, because that you have something you want to see. Not that you want to copy or replicate, but you want to see it happen a certain way. And I think that's critical here. So here we go. I think we've warmed this guy up pretty good. So I can see here the score marks that have been left. We're going to take this guy, place the die in the press, and we're going to clamp it down. So yeah, sometimes, getting back to the original topic, I get asked, John, are you worried about competition when you tell people how to do stuff? And I say no. And that's not the result of some sort of, arrogance where I think, I don't need to worry about competition because, I'm king shit on Turd Island. That doesn't even enter into it. It's because this is not a competitive venue. At least not from my perspective. If you're in business, you're in a competitive field, but there's more to it than just knowing how to do it, right? It's a simple skill, and we're not really, I wouldn't say we're necessarily competing. We're all fishing in the Atlantic Ocean, but it's a big ocean, If I'm in Maine and you're in Brazil, are we competing? No. If I'm in Philadelphia and you're in California and you're selling them all to your, police and security buddies, so what? So what? When people get online and they're shopping, they're already shopping. You're in competition with everybody, the whole entire world. So am I worried about 2 or 3 more people? No. no, this isn't going to make or break anybody. So it's about enjoying it and about putting something good out into the world that you're happy with, that you like to see. Let's see if we can even this up a little bit. Sounds like it's tight. So we'll see how these turn out. It's just a test. Oh, I think I've talked enough already, right? But I gotta fill the dead space. What can we talk about? What can we talk about? I did hot pressing yesterday. I did belt loops today, or the day before. Is anybody out there thinking about what they want to do for 1,000 subscribers? Because I've been thinking a lot. I wound up having a conversation with somebody who I hadn't talked to in a while, and we got back in touch with each other, and they were like really surprised that I was, into guns and stuff, and that they seemed to be concerned that I was some sort of extremist or somebody who maybe promotes violence or has like a very intense and severe point of view. And I don't know. I mean, I try to be laid back about it, but sometimes when I get asked intense questions, you might get an intense answer back. Like if you ask me what I think about the Brady campaign, I'm going to tell you what I think about the Brady campaign. If you ask me what I think about gun control, I'm going to tell you what I think about gun control. There are a lot of people in a lot of different parts of the world, right, where they have a totally oppressive government, and they have to fight and die to see things get changed. There were riots in Thailand recently, and you look at this Arab Spring thing, and the people go into the streets and they have rocks and bottles and they get shot. And sometimes people can affect change in their government through being nonviolent. Look at the Civil Rights Movement in the United States, and people got bludgeoned and killed and dogged and fire hosed and beat within an inch of their life. And you look at the Chicago riots in the '60s and stuff, and people got beat within an inch of their life. And you look at the Occupy movement, and people are trying to make a change, and they get beat down. They get beat down, even in what we call a free society. So the authorities, if you want to make a positive change, there's always going to be somebody there who wants to beat you down. And in some cases, you look around the world and you look at the results of violent revolutions in the past 100 years, and it's easy to make the conclusion that, oh, you know what, these people used violence and now they're worse off. Now, what occurred to me was is that because they used violence, or because some foreign government said, oh, we see that you guys are upset with how things are, we're going to fund your revolution, and that sort of external, when somebody else comes in and stirs up the pot, the results of the revolution aren't going to be quite as necessarily populist, maybe. They're going to have more outside influence. So you look at some of the intervention that we've had overseas, and you look at some of the intervention that other countries like China and Russia have gotten involved in over the past 100 years and so on, that when somebody else comes in and helps you with your violent revolution, it's pretty usual that the country could be worse off at the end of it. Now, that's not necessarily the result of using violence in your revolution. That could be the result of your revolution being co-opted by outside influence. That's a factor to think about. And so you see people getting things done through nonviolent revolution, and that's extremely positive and extremely commendable. But at the same time, if I was in the street and somebody rolled up a tank, you know, the authorities rolled a tank out and said, we're going to kill you all if you don't stop demonstrating, I would really wish that those rocks and bottles were something more substantial. And I think a lot of people who have faced their final moments at the hands of an armed authority really wish that they had a way to equalize that. So where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so you look at situations like these countries where the authorities have disarmed everybody, and when you go to protest, they kill you when they beat you within an inch of your life. And you look at some of these other protests that we have going around in the United States right now, and you look at these young people, some of whom could be misguided, some of whom are on the right track. But I think we're all detecting that there's something wrong here. Some of these people are just getting stomped over the First Amendment, and that breaks my heart. But I saw a video a little while ago of Occupy Phoenix. I think if you Google Occupy Phoenix with AR-15s, you'll see a bunch of guys from one of the local, I think one of their, militia movements down there. They're standing between the cops and the protesters, and they say distinctly, we don't agree with everything the protesters are saying, but we, more or less, we don't want to see them get stomped by the police, so we're here with rifles. Is that a deterrent? You think somebody's going to roll a tank into the street when the protesters show up, exercising their right to open carry? I don't think so. So, here we go. We're going to crack this open. And open this up and see where we're at with these belt loops. I have concerns that the guy might have shifted in there a little bit, but it'll demonstrate the principle, even if it doesn't give me usable belt loops for today. Yeah, it's a little cockeyed, but that's not bad. So here we go. We have our sheet of belt loops, and we can just now break them off, just like that. Look at that. Now, you might need to grab a little pliers here and there and give them a tweak. Yep, there you go. Belt loops, done. So how do you like that? And they line up with my 1 and 2 5/8 inch template. A couple of these guys, that guy's no good. Discard. But I think even a couple of these slightly wonkier ones, we can make them work. And there you go. That's 1 holster, 2 holster, 3 holsters, 4 holsters, 5 holsters worth of belt loops in 20 minutes, and we BS'd a little bit. That's pretty cool, right? So anyway, that's how I make belt loops in a hurry. So, hope you enjoy that video.